Joined now by TSN hockey analyst, former Vancouver Canuck, Mr. Frank Corrado, before he goes on a bit of a summer sojourn here. Nice to see you. How was your Canada Day and free agency weekend?
It was great. We were hard at work at the studio and got to relax afterwards, but all is good. How about you guys?
Fantastic. Did an easy peasy show Saturday after they made the signings that they did, and then was able to enjoy a lovely weather weekend here in Vancouver. Hey, how'd you do on predicting contracts, Frankie? When last we talked, you told us you were the point man on trying to pin down some of the term and money that would fly around on July 1st.
You know what? Just like every general manager, we had some winners and we had some losers. The ones that were the winners, those were my doing, 100%. The ones that were the losers, other people swayed and influenced me, and that's why we didn't nail those down. No, I'm just kidding. But, it's just like anything. There's some you get right, and then some you look at it, you're like, well, I don't see it. But then you have to look at the team situation and be like, well, that team actually had $10 million to go before they hit the salary cap floor. So they actually do need to pay that guy a lot of money just to bring him in. So there was a few situations like that. And then there was also a few situations where you see how much a team values a certain kind of player, and, they're willing to pay a premium for that. But all in all, I thought it was a good experience, a good exercise. And, for our first year doing that sort of thing, something we can definitely build off of.
We're going to talk Canucks here, Cole, Susie, and others in a moment. But did you have a favorite signing?
I don't know if I had a favorite signing. The one trend that I really noticed is that big, rugged, robust defenseman was in high demand. Like, that was the guy that was getting 3-4 years of term and was getting AAV maybe a little bit higher than market value. Just with the way things have gone for Vegas and Tampa Bay, it seems like teams are really valuing that kind of D-man where you know what you're getting consistently night in and night out. And the guy who's like the smooth skating, puck moving guy, maybe a little more one-dimensional, that kind of player either doesn't have a contract today or got like a 1-year term at a decent AAV for what they've been making in years past. But teams were a little more reluctant to commit to that kind of player long-term, which I don't know if that's different than things in the past, but the market certainly showed that teams want that big, rugged defenseman on their team for a while.
I think it extends to forwards, too. I think we saw big forward, just size, period, across the board. Are these all big players that can skate? Or, heaven forbid, do you think the NHL might slow down a little bit with this emphasis on size?
I would say it's more big players that can skate and that can move around. Just the way things are going, these guys, like the way training is, guys can be 6'4", 210 pounds, and they fly around the ice. And that's the thing that was always kind of scary for me as a defenseman. You go out there against the fourth line and you think, okay, these guys are big, maybe they're not that fast, and then they're flying, which always presented a different challenge. But it's one thing to skate around the ice very fast and do your thing there. You want to make plays. You're doing that at like 80% speed. Like, we always talk about guys who can make plays off the rush and high flying. I think it's great. It looks awesome. When it comes down to crunch time and scoring goals and making those plays in and around the front of the net, you have to slow things down. It's just your brain can't keep up to your legs in those situations. And I think those guys, once they kind of establish that body position and, they have a real good time making plays down low. So teams are valuing that. Like, I saw Nick Bukestad, just for an example, like, he got more money than maybe we anticipated, much more money than he was making the year before, because he went to Edmonton and he did great. And he's a big guy. He's 6'4", 6'5". Like, those kinds of players were in high demand. So you're right. It's not just on the back end. It was up front as well.
Yeah, Bukestad, Susie, like these big, like, they're not fast. Like, they're not fast players. It's just size. I do wonder if we start to notice something.
Well, we talked about this. So this is the year where the transition went from we don't mind the small guys because they're faster to, wait a second, the big guys have caught up. They're now fast too.
In the prospects, yes, Matt. Okay. Prospects, yes. Veterans, I don't think so. These are not fast players. I wonder if we're sacrificing some speed here.
I'll put it to you this way. I'll put it to you this way. Okay, so I played guitar basically my whole life, right? So I took an interest into how different guitarists do things, right? And some guys, they'll talk about when they play a guitar solo, they can get up there and they got 45 seconds to rip a solo, and they can shred a million miles an hour and do it really, really fast. And then some guitarists will tell you, yeah, I can do that, but I just kind of do what the song calls for. Whatever the song needs is what I end up doing in that guitar solo. So compare that to hockey, where it's like, okay, the bigger guys or these smaller guys, they can skate really, really fast, but maybe sometimes these bigger guys, they just do what the game calls for and the game needs within that confine, and you get good results because of it.
It's all about tempo, Blick, like your golf swing.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying I think this is different. This is just eating up space versus speed.
But there you go. There you go. You've hit it. You've gotten to the same end, and that is, can you affect space? You can affect space with speed, but you can also affect space with positioning and size, reach and wingspan.
And one other thing on that, like, it's one thing to skate fast. It's another thing to process the game fast, right? Like some guys skate around the ice a million miles an hour, but they think pretty slow, and it slows the game down. Some guys, the puck gets on their stick, and they've taken a look because they're moving at a certain speed. They're like, know exactly what I want to do with this thing already. And that, like, they're processing the game faster, the game's moving faster, but they might not be themselves as fleet of foot as some other players on the ice.
And really, Frankie, like, how often in your career were you skating 100 to 150 feet in a straight line as fast as you can in a game?
I mean, for me, it was going back for pucks for icings or on breakouts, right, like that kind of stuff. Really, most of the game, like, you know, you watch defensemen. I was watching a video the other day. It was like the filthiest NHL goals from last season. And a lot of them are, you know, these really crafty forwards skating in off the rush. And I'm trying to take a look at the defenseman to say, okay, like, what did he do wrong there? And really what it comes down to is, like, 5 to 6 seconds earlier, that defenseman didn't gap up and wasn't really thinking about what could happen, right? So you get burned that way. So what I'm saying is, you can do yourself a lot of favors if you're just thinking like 1 or 2 steps ahead, instead of having to scramble and, you know, have like these really quick frantic crossovers to get back. So like, as much as it's a speed thing, it's a speed in your brain kind of thing as well.
All right, tell us about your old teammate Ian Cole. You played with him in Pittsburgh. He signed here, and we're told that he can play the right side and could well be the partner for Quinn Hughes. Your thoughts on all of that?
So he can play the right side for sure. I was actually, when I played some games for the Pens, I played with him mostly. I played a few games with Ole Mata, 2 different kinds of players. I would say with Ian Cole, I always knew where he was going to be on the ice and what he was trying to do. There was no surprises playing with him, which I really appreciated. And, you know, I know, like, there's some talk maybe he can play with Quinn Hughes. That's fine. But ideally, he would be slotted lower in the lineup. Like when Pittsburgh was having success and he was even a younger, better player in his career, he was playing lower in the lineup than that. He's not a top pair guy, but he's a very serviceable defenseman. He has some puck moving ability. He skates well. He's obviously pretty rugged. Like, he's the kind of guy who's going to lay out and block shots. I can appreciate that about his game. So I like what Ian Cole brings. It's just going to be about slotting him properly. But I will say, like, when it comes to the Canucks blue line now, instead of having, you know, someone on a monstrosity of a contract that's giving you certain quality of hockey, now it's on a much lesser scale, money-wise, giving you that same kind of quality of hockey. So it's, you know, I know they had to get out of the OEL contract, but they're in a more advantageous position now. And they've added the right types of pieces as far as the blue line goes and what they need, but they shouldn't be done. But they just, how are they going to figure this out? They need to shed some money if they want to get more help on the back end.
What are your thoughts on a 1-year deal? Because Drake's brought this up with us yesterday. The 1-year deal is great for your cap, great for your risk management as a team. It depends on the player, though, doesn't it? To be able to, because that 1 year for them is an audition for their next contract, and you're either going to flourish in that environment or you're going to shrink under the weight of it. And you know, it depends on who you are as to whether or not you can thrive in a 1-year setup.
Yeah, and listen, there's some guys that have played a lot of their careers on 1 year deals, and that's kind of who they are, and they've gotten some maybe a 2 year or a 3 year along the way. But it really shouldn't be one of those things where a guy crumbles under the pressure of a 1 year deal because you're right back where you started the next year. And for Ian Cole specifically, like this guy has made the playoffs now in 9 consecutive seasons. And the Canucks, it's been well documented how they think they're right on the cusp of the playoffs. So I wonder if that goes into bringing in a guy like this, thinking like, is this guy going to make it 10 straight years going to the postseason? It's just, I think teams value that kind of stuff. And yeah, like you could say like there's maybe an aspect of that where someone plays on a 1 year deal and it doesn't go well and they crumble. I would say a 1 year deal gives you a lot of urgency and a lot of incentive to put your best foot forward every single night so you can cash in on another, one more 2 year deal or a 3 year deal to finish up. Now I know he's aging and maybe that's not out there for him. Maybe he had to take a 1 year deal. We don't know like all the circumstances, but I would put my money more on a player playing with a lot of urgency, knowing what he just went through as a UFA and wanting to better that experience a year later.
Why do you think Cole was able to have the renaissance last year? He was up to 19 and a half minutes tonight in Tampa. Very good team. And yet there he was playing more minutes alongside a darn good defense corps.
I just think he had to. That was the nature of the beast for Tampa Bay. Like too many defensemen went out the door. Jan Ruda was maybe not a household name to a lot of people before he got to Tampa, but he was excellent for Tampa Bay. Ryan McDonough goes out the door to Nashville, and Tampa needed to make sure that they brought in defensemen that could fit under their cap structure because those two players, Ruda and McDonough, were going to eat up significant portions of that cap that they couldn't afford anymore. So Ian Cole comes in as like your bargain defenseman and has to eat some minutes, has to eat some valuable minutes, and does a good job with it. And it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, just considering the fact that he played on Pittsburgh when they won 2 straight Stanley Cups. And I know I kind of mentioned the fact that he was lower on that decor, but he still played a significant role regardless of the ice time there. So he's been through it, he's done it. I mean, that's what I talk about with like the 9 straight playoff berths. Like that's something that teams value, and he'll have that experience to lean on as the season goes on and hopefully help push the Canucks closer to a playoff spot.
What was the secret of the success there on defense in Pittsburgh, Frankie? Because the 2015-2016 Cup team, I mean, I think after they won, people looked at it and went, this may be the worst defense score to ever win a Stanley Cup. And then the next year, they substitute Ron Hainsey and Justin Schultz for Ben Lovejoy and Brian Dumoulin, and they do it again. They repeat as champion. Is it an oversimplification to say, okay, the goaltending and the forwards were great and they could get by on defense, or was there some sort of trick, some sort of secret to that defense core and the way it fit in winning a couple of championships?
Here's the trick. Okay, huge secret coming up. And this was one of the first things they told me when I got to Pittsburgh. I heard it from the coaching staff. I heard it from a few players. Just get the puck to the forwards.
Yes.
Like on that team, literally, just get the puck to the forwards. However you possibly can, get it in their hands as quickly as possible and just let them do the rest. Like that's how good those teams were offensively and how dynamic that forward group was. So really, like that's the first thing you heard. But I would say there's a couple things that come to mind. Simple process for the Penguins defense. Like it was, you never felt like your partner was too far away. So they would work a lot of these breakout plays where it's like just a little, you call it a dink pass, just a little pass off the boards that maybe goes 4 or 5 feet in either direction. And it's up to your partner to kind of figure that out or call for it. So you didn't have these like long behind the net, slow moving plays. Everything was close support. And then the other thing I noticed playing for the Pens in my brief time there is the coaching staff there does a nice job of matching a forward line with a D pair and trying to make sure that 5-man unit is on the ice together a lot. I noticed it there more than I noticed it on other teams. I thought on other teams I would be playing with like a mixed bag of any given line at any given time in the game. And then for me, like if I was on the third pair, I noticed I was on the ice with that Bonino, Hagelin, Kessel line a lot in the game, like a lot. And then if I ever played on the second pair, because Pittsburgh was really decimated by injuries and they had to put me on the second pair with Ole Mata, I was on the ice with the Malkin line a lot in a game. So I don't know if that's something that continues for the Canucks, and that's something that Tocchet takes into consideration when he's trying to deploy his groups. But maybe that's something to keep an eye on this season, like a little pattern where you say, okay, like the second pair, whoever's on that second pair, if it's Susie and Hronek, like watch if they're on the ice with the second line a lot, or if Hughes is on the ice with Pettersson as much as he possibly can throughout the game.
And no one's going to say that Pettersson and Miller are Malkin and Crosby, but I do wonder. I mean, like the Canucks, when healthy, you've got a pretty skilled group of wingers too. I wonder if you can still sort of steal the general concept of get it to the forwards, let them do a lot of the hauling. Might they be able to apply that for the most part?
I don't think it's bad advice. Like, why do you want to be playing east-west behind your net, going D to D 3-4 times? Like, it really slows the game down. It slows down the flow for your forwards. And, I've been on some teams where coaches are okay with, the puck goes D to D in the neutral zone and it can go back to the D. And I like it as a D-man because I have the puck and I feel like it's organized and controlled. Pittsburgh was one of those places where it's like, once it goes D to D, forget your partner exists. It's not going back there. It has to go north. And it was just that kind of mentality. So, like, that's another thing to keep an eye on if they're going to do something like that. And there's plenty of skill up front for the Canucks. No one ever says that, there's not enough skill up front for Vancouver. The criticism has always been, there's just not enough on the back end, or the back end has too many aging players making too much money. Like that should shift a little bit now with the new guys that have been brought in. And I just think it's sound advice for a defense corps outside of Quinn Hughes to just not mess around with the puck. Like, take your time, make sure you make good plays, but the emphasis has to be north on the tape in a hurry.
And you need good goaltending in that system, and the Canucks have got that too. So.
Well, and I can only imagine how specific that Pittsburgh coaching staff was with Jacques Martin as an assistant and Mike Sullivan, our old friend, the Canucks former assistant, as the head coach, and Tocchet. Yes, that puck goes north, and it goes adjective north, if I'm reading you correctly here, Frankie. Lastly, development camp. You've got some thoughts on development camp as the Canucks look to wrap theirs tonight following a scrimmage at UBC.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm like, I don't know if you're seeing a lot of this around the league, but I'm seeing some development camps where it's like they're bringing 2 full teams and they're doing games all week long. I just think it's crazy to be doing that. Development camp has to be exactly that, development. So the emphasis probably needs to be on where are you at in the gym? This is how NHL players work out. This is what you're going to need to do if you want to get your body to the same level that the NHL players are at. As far as on the ice goes, these guys just went through a whole season. A lot of them traveled to the draft. Now a lot of them are traveling to your cities to go do development camps, some from as far as, Eastern Europe, let's call it that. And now you want them to start playing games and going toe-to-toe. These guys, it's just way too much. The focus should be on, here's your skating mechanics, and here's how you're going to implement it. Here's the game situations where you're going to implement it. And skill development, same kind of deal. Like, here's how you're going to do it. Here's how it works in a game. And put the pieces together. And it doesn't need to be this thing where the players are in town for 7 or 8 days at a time, going head-to-head, playing these scrimmages. It just needs to be, here's what's going to make you a better player. Now, go the rest of the summer and get ready and come back to training camp when you're going to apply all these things and try and earn a contract and do it against the real professionals. Because to ask players, to play at their peak in early July, right after they've been training a little bit, their season finished, they're not quite where they need to be yet for a whole season, then they're going to have to go back and keep training and ramp it up and then do it. Like, we're just, you talk groin injuries, hip injuries, knees, all these kinds of things. Like, that's why those things are creeping in. Like, you're asking too much from these guys. I think it's a great way to teach players, use it as a teaching tool, and then kind of send them on their way with that. Like, give them a booklet of everything that they worked on, they need to work on, and come back and be ready to go with everything you learned.
So memo to Jeff Patterson, don't keep stats tonight. Doesn't matter. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be okay.
No, the
So
live
long as they
tweeting
know
from
how-
development camp.
So long as they know what they're doing in the weight room with their off-ice conditioning.
Pull-ups.
And how to be a pro.
All about the pull-ups.
Yeah.
Speaking of pros, you're one, my friend, the best. Thank you for this. You're off for a few weeks here. Look forward to catching up later in the summer, Frankie.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.